For years, the conventional wisdom on lithium boat batteries was lithiums are great for your trolling motor, for a deep cycle application like that, and then you have a dedicated lead acid battery as your starting motor, and that runs typically the rest of your electronics. But that's all changing now. I have a friend who's a professional fishing guide who's sponsored by Ranger Boats, and for this year, he gets a new boat. There's no lead acid in it. It's all lithium, both the starting and the batteries for the trolling motor. So in this video, I'm going to talk about why that is and review a lithium starting deep cycle battery that I got at the beginning of the year. I put a lot of time on it before I was going to do the review, make sure everything's good. I got it in December, so I've been using it ever since, and I fish a lot. Earlier this year, I reviewed a trolling motor specific lithium battery. I'll link that video at the end of this one. But it's not as clear a choice for the starting / deep cycle because they are still a bit pricey because of the technology that's needed to go into them. And I'm gonna talk about that. Pretty much any decent lithium is gonna have low temperature protection now. It'll automatically shut off the charging process if you try to charge them when it's so cold that it would damage them. You can see that signified right there. But if you have a starting motor, oftentimes you rely on that being charged by your engine. You never really charge that separately. It's hooked up, it starts your engine, it runs the rest of your electronics, and every time your engine's running, just like a car, it's being charged. So how does that work with these lithiums that can't be charged in cold weather if you're fishing a climate where it's often colder than that? If it is cold, this battery, the starting battery, dual purpose, will actually use current generated by your engine to warm the terminals so that it can be safely charged. So that's one thing. Also, it can deliver the cold cranking amps necessary to start up to a 250 horsepower motor, which your simple lithium 12-volt batteries that were deep cycle only would not do. And third, the reason why you often have a separate battery for your starter from your trolling motor, you don't want to accidentally deplete your starting motor and be stranded by running your trolling motor all day. Well, the other thing this lithium has is it connects via Bluetooth to your phone, so you can actually see what the capacity is on your battery. Are you 80%? Are you 50%? Have you been losing power? But unlike a lead acid, if you are in a situation, especially with the amount of electronics guys run these days, if they have live scope or multiple sonars running, you could actually risk depleting your lead acid battery to the point where it's not going to turn over your big engine. I don't have to worry about that because I have a smaller engine, but this one, because it's lithium, it's still going to deliver the same power, even if you've depleted over half the capacity, whereas lead acid, you might run into a problem if you've depleted that battery too much and then you try to start your engine. I've been running it for about 7 months. I actually got it in December and I was nervous because my first couple trips out, it was very cold out, so that's when I was most worried about its performance, being a lithium battery. Actually, my first trip out in the boat was in early March and there was still ice on the lake I was fishing. The water was 37 degrees. I had no issues with the battery. I continue to have no issues with it. I haven't had to charge it once. It's being charged effectively from my engine. So I don't have much to say on that front. As I said, the cost is a concern. So a simple trolling motor battery like this one here costs like $280, and I used it to replace a battery that was lead acid that maybe cost $175, $150. So this is definitely worth it because it's going to far outlive that battery. So from that perspective alone, it is worth the money. This, with all the technology that it has, it's more like $500. Who is this going to be worthwhile for? Well, eventually perhaps it will outlive the number of lead acid batteries you'd go through because it should last about 4 or 5 times as long. So you do the math, if you had $150 lead acid starting deep cycle battery, you go about 3 or 4 of those, and then maybe it pays for itself, but it takes a lot longer to pay for itself than the trolling motor battery because of the cost. And the cost is coming from, like I said, all that extra technology. It heats it's self-heating so that it can be charged on your boat, on the water. It can turn over large engines. It could basically do as is everything that a starting deep cycle is while being lighter, while allowing for deeper discharges, and while having a longer lifetime of the battery. I think one reason that this becomes more attractive than the lead acid is because now people run so many electronics, typically running off the same battery that's starting your engine, that you run the risk if you're in a position for a long time, if you're one boat position and you're not running your engine, you run the risk of depleting your lead acid battery. And lead acids don't deliver steady voltage across their whole discharge. So people who are really electronic heavy and might spot lock in one position for a long period of time running multiple sonars, or maybe their lead acid's getting old and they don't know how discharged it is, this is going to be a lot more reliable in that instance. So like this one, for example, is 140 amp hours and it's a lithium. So you get the equivalent of a 280 amp hour lead acid. The reason I double the numbers because lead acids often do not deliver the necessary voltage once they're 50% or below, where this can be depleted 80, 90% safely. And you're gonna know, you're not gonna be blindsided because you'll have Bluetooth information on how discharged your battery is. So from that perspective, if you have a lot of electronics you run off your starting deep cycle battery and you fish a lot, this is gonna be more worthwhile. So the main cons that would have prevented people from getting these in the past: high upfront cost, which is still the case, but in a long enough time span, it's probably equal or less expensive to get this if you can afford to get it up front because of the amount of batteries you would have gone through anyway. The cold weather performance was a limitation, and the cold cranking amps, but these are self-heating now using the current from your engine, so that problem is basically solved. And can they deliver the cold cranking amps? And the cells have simply been engineered to do that in these dual purpose batteries. You can save an additional 5% off any of these batteries, any lithium tied products with discount code ABSOLUTE. Like I said, I've had no problems with them, and I didn't do either review until I had at least 6 months on the water. I've actually had 9 months on the water with this one, and this one now I've had like 2 years, and I haven't had any problems with either of them. You want a dedicated lithium charger for your trolling motor battery. This one I haven't had to charge even once. It's completely interchangeable with my lead acid I replaced, and it saved about 40% of the weight. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it informative, and thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.